Hi, my name is Trisha Qualley, and I'm the managing partner of Affiliated Advisors. I'm excited to have Tom Ripperger with us today, also managing partner of Affiliated Advisors, to present on an important topic. Tom, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Trisha. Like Trisha said, my name is Tom Ripperger. Today, we're here to talk about why you should trust your employees to work from home. Our mission at Affiliated Advisors is to help advisors build the businesses of their dreams while serving their clients with integrity, creativity, and compassion. One of the things I wanted to talk about is, just our own experience in dealing with this. My role here is to work on center of influence strategies, sponsor relationships, succession planning. One of the things we talk about too that we're working on, and Trisha, I, and Rita work on a lot, is how do we make sure our employees are engaged? How are they having a good experience working at our company? And one of the things we've had to talk about quite a bit in the past 4 months is, what is it like to work from home? That dynamic has changed a lot. This company, if I just go around, kind of Deanna works from home and was working from home before. She now is joined at home with her 3 young children, and it's a different dynamic. Same with Samantha. Lori has also worked from home for a long time and has a young child who's older now. So when I was doing research to get some opinions on this, I talked to a lot of our employees. I realized it was skewing towards moms. Towards moms, and just to be honest, that's where it was skewing. So I reached out to other business owners and other advisors and advisors who have practices just to make sure we had kind of a roundabout perspective on what's going on, and to give you kind of a lot of different ideas. This is, I think, the 5th in our quarantine series. We have 2 more to go. The next one is on nursing home worries, and that should be fantastic. And that's from Lori, our insurance expert. And then we'll be doing virtual prospecting for real results. And that one is much more on the, how do you get clients? So today we're talking about how you can be happy as a manager, how your employees can be happy, because I think there's just a lot of people struggling. There's a lot of anxiety right now. As people are thinking through how to come back to work, some states people are going back, others just started, some are not ready to go back yet. We are in actually all phases of that. We have an office in New Jersey where some people are trickling in. We have an office on the Upper West Side of New York. Nobody's going back to that office right now. And we have an office in Michigan where we're going to pick things up, but people aren't there yet. And then Minnesota, Tricia and I have an office, and we could start going there, but we haven't yet, because I think we found out that we're working from home quite effectively. So the agenda today is just to talk about my evolution. I would say when I started out in my career, I was a cynic about working from home. And quite frankly, so was everybody else. And then today I would say I'm an advocate for it. I think it's a great idea, as long as you do it right. It is not for everybody, but certainly for the right employees, it can be fantastic for the company and the employee. And we'll go through ownership perspectives, employee perspectives, where you can end up in a happy medium, how to communicate clearly, and then just some basic tips on how to be successful in doing it. Some are a little bit HR, some are technology. So my experience, which probably emulates a lot of owners in the audience today, I started in 1990s as a manager at a kind of a larger company, actually a local bank. I had 2 direct reports myself. Everyone was in the office. And there wasn't even a thought. People didn't ask if they could work from home. People were very formal about requesting time off, asking for, can I have an hour off here? I need to go home to do something. They're very, very kind of formal about how you get time off. In 2000 to 2004, I moved to ING where I had 30 employees reporting to me. I think one towards the end had Fridays off because she had adopted 2 children from China and needed some time to, bond and do stuff. And it was new. I think the reason it was allowed then is that ING was a Dutch company and they were kind of ahead of the curve from the US, but something that started. I've read some books recently where, and it reminded me of what this was like when someone asked to work part-time back then. what it really ended up being a lot of times is they got paid for half time and then they worked full time because people didn't respect the boundaries of them being at home. And I would tell you that my wife was kind of in that situation when she started working from home when we had our first child. But back then, everyone was in the office, some flexibility, but not a lot. I moved to an accounting firm, McGladrey, in 2004. I had 2 employees. Our 2 management teams were split between Minneapolis and Charlotte. And I think what I saw there, not that it was the start of work from home, but it was the start of having technology, laptops that functioned well, the VPN worked well. And then we each had, the management teams each had a large screen TV in a conference room that we could go in and had a direct link where we could have pretty good visual meetings, not as good as meeting face to face, because when I first started, we were going down to Charlotte once a month, staying there for a couple of days to have management meetings. And then towards the end, we were doing them digitally. So the technology started to get better. So it was easier. In 2013, I moved to a company where we had 42 employees and grew to 104. During that time, I noticed definitely a shift when I was trying to hire people. So the management there didn't want to do it, was kind of just very traditional in that. But I noticed when I was interviewing and trying to bring in highly skilled employees, when I got down to the last 2 candidates, inevitably, and I can think of 3 specific situations where there was to be a working mother who wanted to have the flexibility to be at home at certain times for her children and didn't want to come downtown and mess with the commute and the traffic. And I think we lost out on 3 very, very talented people because of that. And then at one point, I needed a really high-end technology person, and we hired an employee in Florida. She worked from home. It worked out fantastic for the company, very skilled. And so, during that time, I realized, look, one, this is the industry and people are moving that way. And I wanted to make sure that I could hire people that were best for the job, even though they needed some flexibility. And we'll talk about that in some of the things later on that employees gave feedback. March of 2019, I joined Affiliated Advisors. You saw all the people that worked there earlier. Flexible company, people work from home. And now in March, like everybody else, everybody's working remotely. And I would just say that working remotely is different than the highly flexible environment and more from the employee standpoint. And we'll talk about that in these slides. So some things to think about as the owner of a company. One of the things I've gotten some feedback is, owners will say, well, I don't like it because I don't know if they're working. I think a response to that is, well, how do you know employees are working when they're in your office? We've all worked at places where there's a person walking around, talking to everybody, always in the lunchroom, downtown Minneapolis, when you're walking through the skyways, and maybe they're there, but once they show up at 8, they're not really doing much work. So there's that side of that. And then there's just, how do you know they're working? If you trust employees to work from home, mostly my experience is that they will want to earn that trust back because I've noticed they end up working more and doing a better job because they're trying to prove that they can do it from home and be flexible. The next question I've got from owners is, do you have to allow everybody if you allow one? And the answer is you don't. You can set up an HR policy. And the articles that I posted in here have some good kind of things to think through, that you have to have a score of 90 on, getting your projects done to before you could work from home, or, it's for certain classifications of jobs, certain skill sets. You can kind of be fair in doing it by just putting in some policies that make it so people have to ask. And all the things I've read, it said, make sure that there's a policy where they have to request it, where it's just not accepted. And then the last thing, just what I mentioned about do you want to eliminate highly skilled workers who want flexibility? And I would say if you're, trying to hire younger tech people, they are just kind of expecting to work from home. I have a friend who runs a technology firm. I talked to him about this. Almost all their employees work from home. What they do is they make sure they do a bunch of events where people are getting together, both in an office environment and a non-office environment, so that they develop the camaraderie and the culture of the firm through those events. And so that's on a completely different perspective, I think, than most advisory firms, because most advisory firms are still somewhat traditional where people work from home. For an employee, and these are things, it's really nice to not have a commute. There's more time for kids or, to care for elder parents. One really nice thing and something to think about if you're thinking about doing it, when should someone work from home and when should they not? Project-based work, research, things where you don't want to have interruptions. I've had employees in the past that just wanted to work from home for a day or two because in the office, they're in a cube environment where there's 30, 40 people and they're just interrupted all day long and they have a hard time getting kind of really detailed, focused research done when coworkers are around talking to them. You don't have to pay for parking. That's a nice perk for, both can be for a company and an individual, depending upon who pays for it. And quite frankly, can be quite expensive. On the downside, some feedback we've got is you don't get a break in your day. The really big one that my employees mentioned is you don't get to turn off. Now, you can put boundaries in place for there, but what they're saying is the lines are just getting blurred because they're flexible, but they get calls early, they get calls later on. And because they've been taking them all day long on their cell phone or their computer, they feel like they should answer them later. So pros and cons. The only thing to add on here is that you miss out on interaction, but so you do have to think through if you have full-time at home people that they are getting enough of the culture of the firm so that they develop their loyalty and just interaction with employees so they know who to call and making things get done quickly. So these two studies, the first one there are things that I would highly recommend you link on and read them. The first one says that the average employee right now is working 3 more hours a day, and that's a lot. And that survey comes from just looking at login times and logout times for computers. 3 hours is a lot, so instead of 8 to 5, it's maybe 7 to 7. Which means you're, in the dinner hour, you're in when you're bringing your kids around. I think for a while it didn't matter because nobody had any place to bring their kids and no one had any place to go at night after work. But as things are turning back on now and you have places to go and things to do, it's going to be kind of harder to do it. At first, I think people were just, they were happy to be working and they didn't have other things to do. The second article, I could highly, highly recommend looking at that article. It has a very good thing for what you should think about as not only the owner, but things you could give to your employees to do it. And it also has kind of an app where you can create your own work from home policy. So this is a quote that came out of that article. When I showed this to my employees, they said, make sure to say, do not be this manager. Sending out emails. This is an email that was sent to the employees of a company actually in Canada. And this is the type of stuff that shows up in online reviews about your company. So be very careful about having, putting this out. So here are some quotes from employees and just, when I was surveying a lot of people, one thing is I would not be working at the firm if they didn't allow me to work from home. So a very strong opinion about the value of working from home. It saved me an hour commute each ways and they spend that time with their daughter. I've had employees in the past that they just wanted to be home when their kids got off the bus. And then, so they just at home to work. They were happy to come in time. They just wanted to be around when their children were around in the morning and then when they came home. The next one is a downside. My wife doesn't like it when I get constant calls at dinner. Wife or husband, whatever you prefer, but there is time. You have to be careful when you allow people to work from home that it just doesn't bleed into all day. And then the last is, I think some maybe owners think that all employees want to do that, and that's not true. And this is one that COVID has changed my opinion about working from home, and it's super stressful. And this is the employees at our office. This is super stressful for them because they're not, their kids are there too. So when they negotiated their work from home, or it was very important to them. They were doing it where they had kids at daycare and they had someone to take care of them. Where they don't have daycare now, it's just been very, very tough. And I've talked to some people in the last week where their kids are back, they're in some summer stuff, and we're in different states. So in Minnesota, I talked to someone who went back last week and they were thrilled that their kids were gone, but prior to that, they didn't like it. And in New York and Brooklyn, the employee we have, she still has them home, and and thinks it's super stressful. And if you don't have help, and I think in the past people would have used grandparents for help. Well, now no one wants to infect their grandparents with COVID, so there just isn't a lot of options right now. So how can you get to a happy medium where both the owner and the employees? I'd say the biggest thing is have constant open dialogue. And the other side is don't assume that anyone wants to be home all the time. Actually, the feedback I got right now is that people don't want to be home all the time. The key in each one of the people that I talked to this that really liked working from home, it wasn't that they always wanted to be at home, is that they wanted the flexibility to be there for important events in their family. They recommend having a set schedule when they're in the office. So maybe you're there Tuesday and Thursday and you're at home other days. Those days are more important, and it's a lot easier to kind of get part-time daycare. And then even when you're at home too, there should be a set schedule. Like when you're working, it's 8 to 5. And obviously maybe you're running around and doing other stuff, but just have a schedule. Something to think about is in your policy is what does the role require? So if you are the front desk person answering phone calls and, being the greeter, well, right now you don't need it, but when you get back to work and people start to come in, that is a job function that needs to be there. Some job functions have a lot of interaction and others don't. And just think through that when you're thinking through your policy. You don't have to do the same thing for everybody. Be respectful of after work hours. When you're constantly, pinging them with email. I even have noticed of myself in the past, well, I'm working on the weekend and I'm sending emails. I don't really expect that my employees are also responding to emails, but what happens if they have their phone, they end up doing it. So I've been thoughtful about when to do that. You can turn off your email at certain times so you can still get all your thoughts out, but you're not inundating the office with emails. In Germany, actually, I read that you have to, if you have a company in the unions there, your server has to shut off any email going from a manager to an employee over the weekend. And in Germany, is thought of a very progressive and strong economy. So I just thought that was an interesting thing. One thing that we've heard of is a lot of managers who are struggling with this are holding lots of meetings. And when I mentioned this to our employees, they're like, please don't do that. You can have meetings with your employees, but 3 meetings a day for all your employees to check in on what they're doing, honestly just shows kind of a lack of trust, and it takes people out of their normal work patterns. If you have employees that report directly to you, do have regular check-ins, and we'll give you some things to talk about. We created these tasks, and one reason we have these tasks is we created these originally for when employees were going on vacation. They could easily hand off their work to somebody else and say, here's what I do every day. You'll cover in for me. These are the things that you do on a daily, weekly, and monthly basis. And it makes it a lot easier for you as the manager if you have your employees create these and then you have this so you know what needs to be done. Some technology tools use a CRM in the financial services industry. Redtail is a really good one. It just, you want to know when a conversation happened with a client, you can go into Redtail, and when you're prepping for a meeting, those are just really good. CRMs are very helpful. Cloud storage. We had used a different one called Jungle Dish. It's like $8 a month. And now all of our project stuff moved to there and everyone can look at it rather than emailing it around. It just makes it easier. Video chat's been a really big deal. I know everyone's maybe tired of Zooms. We're using Teams for our internal meeting and Zoom for seminars that we're putting on. When you're having the larger the meeting becomes up to a certain size, the better off it has video, because otherwise, if you're doing a phone call, to be honest, a lot of people right now are very good at multitasking. if you're trying to get people focused and getting their opinion on stuff, it's a lot easier to be respectful when you can see that someone's ready to talk. You can see their face, you can read their interactions. That's why, video chat's really helpful. To the employees that work from home, they said make sure you have reliable connectivity. So those are things like good internet in the house, but also a backup, like different phone companies have little pucks that you can use to download the internet or have service. So have a backup to the home Wi-Fi. Make sure the home Wi-Fi is good. Have a phone that works. One thing that was mentioned is different carriers have like a tower you can put in a house. It's usually like $200 permanently, and that makes sure that they're always on. And they were very clear, and they had each bought one of these things when they went to home to make sure that they never went down, and they had a backup when they needed it. So Tricia, I'll take a pause here before I do final thoughts if there are any questions.
Great. We did have one question that came in, and the question is, if I'm hiring a new employee, how can you transition someone as a new employee in a remote environment right away from day one?
From day, if they're in the office, they're not coming into the office. Some of the same stuff, I would highly recommend trying to get them into the office just so they can meet people. But if that's not possible and you're hiring someone, Zoom meetings, using, that kind of stuff, because you can share documents there. You can go over documents. You can check in. And I would just say, check in a little bit more at the beginning, have meetings, be clear, make sure other managers and other coworkers know to be available to them, because they're going to have lots of questions about how your environment works. So, have a communication channel about this person's the manager. This is what other people in the office do, why you should call them. Probably set up meetings with each person for them to, here's someone who can help you, and have them do, hour meetings to go through what they do and share how the things they do in the office. So maybe be a little more formalized about the structure of introducing them to your company and your policy. The same things you would do, like larger companies do onboarding. Just be very, very purposeful about how to do that, because I think otherwise they're not going to get to know people and know who to call, and they'll get comfortable with your company quicker.
Great. Thank you.
Yep. So final thoughts. One, embrace flexibility. You don't, do what is comfortable to you. It's your company. So, do what you want. But I would say, be open to doing work from home. It's been a very valuable tool for the companies I've been at, not only for the company, but for the employees. Be open and consistent with your communication. And just remember that you don't have to make a decision today that you can't take back if you don't like it. So give it a try and go forward with it. And with that, be safe and have a good week and a good summer.